The next broadcast will start shortly. Did you know the best run municipalities in South Africa are all governed by the DA? DA mayors are working hard to protect residents from bad governance and mismanagement by getting the basics right, delivering better services and having zero tolerance for corruption. This is the DA difference. The next broadcast will start shortly. Follow us on social media for the latest in news and politics in South Africa. Like and follow our page on Facebook. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram and X. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything. Be part of the conversation. Tell us what you think in the comment section. And please, like and share our videos with your friends and family. The next broadcast will start shortly. If you care about South Africa and want to make a positive difference, then join the DA. Visit our website at da.org.za for more information. Find out who represents you in your ward and district. Who are the DA mayors working for you in your town or city, and which MPs represent you and your causes in Parliament. On our website, you can learn more about our latest campaigns and how you can get involved. Join the Democratic Alliance to rescue South Africa. Become an activist, become a councillor, become a member of Parliament if you care about South Africa. Please visit donate.da.org.za. Donate to a cause you believe in. Donate to make a difference. Welcome to a broadcast of the Democratic Alliance. Did you know the Democratic Alliance is the stable anchor of the Government of National Unity? DA ministers and DA deputy ministers are getting things done with a special focus on job creation and economic growth, driving down the cost of living and placing the needs of the people first. Join the mission to rescue South Africa. The next broadcast will start shortly. Did you know the best run municipalities in South Africa are all governed by the DA? DA mayors are working hard to protect residents from bad governance and mismanagement by getting the basics right, delivering better services and having zero tolerance for corruption. This is the DA difference. The next broadcast will start shortly. Follow us on social media for the latest in news and politics in South Africa. Like and follow our page on Facebook. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram and X. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything. Be part of the conversation. Tell us what you think in the comment section. And please, like and share our videos with your friends and family. The next broadcast will start shortly. If you care about South Africa and want to make a positive difference, then join the DA. Visit our website at da.org.za for more information. Find out who represents you in your ward and district. Who are the DA mayors working for you in your town or city, and which MPs represent you and your causes in Parliament. On our website, you can learn more about our latest campaigns and how you can get involved. Join the Democratic Alliance to rescue South Africa. Become an activist, become a councillor, become a member of Parliament if you care about South Africa. Please visit donate.da.org.za. Donate to a cause you believe in. Donate to make a difference. Let's rescue South Africa. Join the DA, because the DA gets things done.
Good. All right. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, South Africa. My name is Karabo Khachau, DA National Spokesperson. Thank you so much for joining our DA presser here today, where we will be making an important announcement regarding the fuel levies of the country. And joining me to have that conversation, I'll start on my far left. That is Ndade Paul Swartz, who's the NCOP member of the Select Committee on Finance. On my immediate left is the DA spokesperson on finance, Dr. Mark Burke. Then on my immediate right is Nazli Sharif, who's the DA spokesperson on social development. And then on my far right is James Lorimer, who's the DA spokesperson on minerals and petroleum resources. Now, colleagues, the purpose of today is very simple. South Africans are already battling to put food on the table for themselves and their families. We have a cost of living crisis that dictates that we cannot afford to see any cost of any essential good go up. And so with the looming announcement of a fuel hike coming up soon, we thought it is important as responsible partners within the GNU for us to come and table solutions on how to try to deal with this problem. Ours is simple: to participate in the GNU optimally, to maximize the voices of ordinary South Africans who depend on a government that is responsive to their cries, and to make sure that each and every solution that we bring to the table meets their daily needs. So without wasting any time, I'm first going to hand over to James Lorimer, who is the DA spokesperson on minerals and petroleum resources, to give us the diagnosis of the problem. James?
Thanks, Karawe. As the war continues in the Persian Gulf, the impact is felt by countries around the world, even countries like ours who have no direct participation in the war. And when it broke out, our most immediate concern was that of fuel supply. So just the background on that is that we only import about 20% of our crude oil from the Persian Gulf. The rest of it predominantly comes from West Africa. And we have a substantial crude oil reserve. Of more concern was the supply of refined fuel products. Because of the closure of 3 of our refineries over the last few years, we don't refine all our own fuel at the moment. So we don't know exactly where all that refined product comes from. So it was a bit of a concern. We do know some of it comes from the Gulf, or came from the Gulf. And to this effect, I asked Minister Gwede Mantashe last week to tell us what the position was with regard to refined fuel, so that South Africans could plan ahead in the event of supply disruptions. I'm happy to say that at yesterday's Portfolio Committee of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, he told us that we were okay with refined product at least until the end of April, and thereafter the prospects for supply were good. So if we accept what the minister has told us, and he's likely to repeat it today in the House during questions to ministers, if we accept that, the focus then moves on to the next problem, and that is of fuel pricing. And what we have heard with the rocketing of fuel prices around the world, our costs when the price is adjusted early next month are likely to rocket, the most that they've ever gone up in a month. And so we're looking at an increase of around 5 Rand per litre of petrol, and between 7 and 9 Rand per litre of diesel. And obviously this will have a huge effect on all South Africans. So it's that problem that we've set about trying to solve.
This is very tiny. Yeah, it is. Thank you very much, James. So now I'm going to hand over to our spokesperson on social development, Nazli Sharif, who's going to paint the picture and how this impacts on the lives of every South African.
Good morning. First, we must be clear. This latest fuel hike should not be a burden that South Africans are forced to carry alone. Not now. Not when people are already stretched to breaking point. Across this country, the cost of living continues to rise, and ordinary South Africans simply cannot keep up. Fuel is not a luxury. It is essential to how the economy functions. It gets people to work, food onto shelves, and services delivered. So when fuel prices increase, everything becomes more expensive. We are already seeing it. Transport cost rises, food prices increase, and households that are already struggling are pushed even further. Families are paying more for electricity, they're paying more for food, more for transport, while income remains the same. Social grants, which millions rely on, do not increase fast enough to keep up. Their real value declines as the cost of living rises. This is the reality. People are not living, they are surviving. From a social development perspective, the consequence is immediate and severe. Higher fuel costs means higher taxi fares, making it harder for people to get to work, to get to school, or to access healthcare. It means a domestic worker must cut back on food just to afford transport to get to work. It means a grandmother must stretch her grant even further to feed her family. It means a young job seeker cannot afford to access opportunities. In rural communities, the impact is even worse, with long distances and limited transport options increasing isolation. We are seeing inequality deepen, food insecurity rise, and access to opportunity shrink. South Africans should not be punished for global pressures beyond their control. The Democratic Alliance believes government must step in to shield people from the worst of this crisis, because at its core, it is about dignity. Ensuring that South Africans can afford to live and not just to survive. And it is about making it clear that in this moment, we choose to stand with South Africans, to protect them, to fight for them, and to make sure that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Nazli. I think, colleagues, it's clear South Africans cannot afford to pay more for fuel. And it is clear that the problem here immediately is not supply, but is the cost. And to dive deeper into this, I'm going to hand over to our NCOP member on the Select Committee on Finance, Paul Swartz.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, South Africans. We are heading crisis times. We don't have control over the wars, but we do have control on how we can treat and we can solve and put solutions to the table to help our ordinary citizens. And that is what and why we're here today. We can just imagine the impact that a diesel price increase of 9 rand per litre will have on the ordinary citizens. We're thinking about, the farmers that are already struggling, and this is now the time, the planting season for farmers, and what they will do with this price increase of 9 rand per litre. And then, as Naz said, on the ordinary citizens of South Africa. I have a lady working for me in my house, just from Delft to Bella. She's paying from and to. She's paying for Uber 60 rand to come to my house and then 60 rand back. And what impact that will have on transport of that lady who just survive and to provide for a family. And we are here today to address this and to see if we can really, speak to the minister, because and we are here with a workable, funded alternative for this crisis, and we will put that solution on the table. And that is what I really want to address, is that we really, as South Africans, we cannot ask citizens to suffer while billions sit in unused government accounts. And that is what one of the solutions that Honourable Mark Burke will put on the table. And that is one of the things that is workable, and that is one thing that we can really pull out. And that is, as Naza said, on the ordinary citizens, they're already paid, and the increase in municipal services, the electricity and the transport, and beside the farmers, there's business people who have contracts, transport contracts, and what that will have, they signed a contract for a year or two, and now what that will have, the impact on that transport contractor on transporting deliveries from point A to point Z. And then as I spoke about the farmers, and then the entrepreneurs who started a business and the impact that will have on their businesses to survive. And that is really that we need to address. I just want to conclude that every rand increased in fuel is a direct tax on the poor people of South Africa. And I hope that we will really come up with a solution. We did it last year with VAT, and we can do it this year with the increase in petrol and diesel. I thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, colleagues, I think we now know what the problem is, how severe it is, and who it affects. But the question in everybody's mind is, but what is the solution? And without wasting time, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Mark Burke, who's the DA spokesperson in finance, to give us that solution.
Thank you, Karabo and colleagues in the media for being here today. As has now been clearly illustrated, there's a problem facing South Africa, and I don't want to belabor the point, except that it's worth saying that South Africans are now on the firing line of an oil price shock. And so the Democratic Alliance is willing to work with the Minister of Finance to urgently reduce both the RAF and the general fuel levies by 50% for the duration of the oil price shock, or as long as possible. Combined, these two levies contribute 6.35 rand, or 6 rand and 35 cents, to the overall price of fuel. And consequently, a 50% reduction would dampen increases by 3 rand 17 and provide immediate and essential relief to South Africans who are staring down the barrel of a massive price shock in a week's time. As we've now heard, petrol is set to increase by more than 5 rand per litre and diesel by more than 9 rand per litre. And so it's imperative that we try and effect a 3 rand 17 cents discount across the two. Now, of course, the DA is aware that such a pause in levies would affect tax revenue, as well as RAF funding, totaling about 6.5 billion rand a month. And this is not insignificant, but it's worth saying that the shock of not doing anything to protect South Africans and our fragile economy is likely far larger. Sharp petrol price increases will hurt GDP, it will increase inflation, and it will cripple household budgets. Moreover, it's possible for government to recover these lost funds without new taxes and without new debt. I'm going to say that again. We can recover these funds without new taxes and without new debt. We're proposing a monthly drawdown as needed from the following sources. 1, demanding that the compensation fund pay over its surpluses. 2, pulling surplus funds from CETAs. 3, giving TARs teeth so that departments are forced to find inefficiencies. 4, extending ghost worker audits to municipalities and state-owned entities. I'll briefly deal with each one of these 4 sources in turn. The first thing to point out is that over recent years, National Treasury has given the Compensation Fund permission for that entity to retain sizable surpluses, despite the fund having sufficient reserves to meet its liabilities. Its full name, the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases, or COVID Fund, is meant to provide social security to workers. Yet, it suffers from years of mismanagement. It's evidenced by audit failures, and it is likely overfunded. In its 24-25 annual report, it applied to retain a 21.7 billion rand surplus, despite receiving a disclaimer audit opinion. Now, to put that in context, that's more than 3 months' worth of fuel tax relief. It's going to pause there without going into a great deal of detail to say that if you've got this surplus of, in just 1 year, 21.7 billion rand, and our proposed measure, which is a 50% discount on these 2 levies, which comes to about 6.5 billion a year, you divide the 21 by the 6.5 and you get at least 3 months worth of relief. And this is our approach here. We're going to find monthly sources of revenue to replace what would have come from the pump from the average South African. The second one is, as of 2024, it was estimated that the notorious CETAs, which I point out the president himself indicated a willingness to reform, sit on 6.7 billion rand in annual surpluses, which is enough for 1 month's relief. We also need to be strengthening, thirdly, the TARS program, which is the spending review program, so that reluctant departments are forced to make cuts to outdated and inefficient programs. Despite having currently few teeth, TARS has already found almost 12 billion rand in savings over the medium term, and that's a further 2 months' relief. Finally, the ghost worker audit has flagged over 4,000 potential fraudulent workers, and many believe that ghost workers and their prevalence is far higher at the local government and state entity level, where controls are lax. The saving from expanding this audit to local government and state-owned entity level is as yet undetermined. So with all of these measures, these reforms would yield permanent savings. The fuel levy freeze is a once-off. In the long run, South Africa's finances won't only be healthier because we're able to mitigate this oil shock, our finances will be stronger because our spending will be less wasteful. I have also today written to the President and the Minister of Finance to request urgent action on both fuel price relief and South Africa's fuel supply security. South Africans should not be forced to carry the full cost of an international conflict outside of our control, especially when the government continues to waste taxpayer money, which we can control. Now is the time for decisive leadership that puts people first, and we in the DA stand ready to find a way to do so. Thank you.
Sure. Crisp. There you have it, South Africa. The Democratic Alliance is calling for a 50% reduction on the cost of fuel. And ours is simple. This can be done provided we strengthen our government expenditure efficiency and by making sure that we put South Africans first. The DA's commitment to the people of South Africa when we entered the GNU was simple, that we will fight to bring each solution possible to the table on each and every matter that affects the daily lives of South Africans. The cost of fuel affects everybody in South Africa, from business to ordinary South Africans. And as committed partners of the GNU and as responsible and responsive public representatives in government, ours is to put you first and to bring solutions that matter to you. That solution is a 50% reduction in the cost of fuel. Now, colleagues, in fuel levies, yes. So the idea here, colleagues, is to make sure that we do not have more and more South Africans having to dig deeper into their pockets to survive everyday living, to go to work, to put food on the table for themselves and their families. I'm now going to open open for an opportunity for questions from the media, if there are. As is standard protocol, please indicate yourself, the media house you represent, and to whom you're directing the question, and then we'll take questions as is. I'll start with the first round. One question from the floor. Okay, let's have that question.
Thanks, Karabo. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News. Firstly, we saw a pause in the fuel levy 4 years ago, and that didn't go down well. That was a struggle to achieve, and it's since been reinstated. What kind of appetite do you think there's going to be for the DA's proposal, and how do you go about making this proposal to the Finance Minister? And you have not explained what would then be done to fund the RAF that is already billions in debt and liabilities if it didn't get the funding that it does get from the fuel levy. And then secondly, is there a proposal from the DA to help cushion the blow for farmers, not only in terms of, they've got foot and mouth disease, they've got fuel prices, and now they also have increasing fertilizer cost prices. It just seems to get worse and worse for them. Is there any proposal from the DA in terms of how to cushion the blow for farmers? Thank you.
Okay, those are three from Lindsay. Mark, I'll give you a first bite.
Yeah. So, Lindsay, the first question is, what precedent was set and how was that received at the time? It's almost 4 years ago to the day that the reduction was announced. So this is not without precedent. Of course, the way they tried to fund that discount at that time was different to the proposal we're putting on the table today. They were selling off in the background oil reserves to fund that discount. But this can be done. And more importantly, at this juncture, it should be done. The fact is a 9 Rand increase in diesel represents in and of itself almost a 50% increase in the price of diesel. So we need relief. Across the board, South Africans would not be able to afford this increase. So we must find a way. What we've done today is we've set out how it can be done, and that can be done in a fiscally responsible manner by effectively finding pots of money that are sitting idle and are in excess of what's needed. So on the compensation fund, which is our first proposal on the table here, the surpluses in the last year is 21.4 billion, and as I have it, there's about 4 billion on average in liabilities per year. So they are far overfunded for the liabilities they face, and on an actuarial calculation, you could say even 10 years of funding could be retained in that entity, and there'll still be a sizable surplus. I'll also point out that I've seen noises from the unions, including COSATU, that something needs to be done here. And so we're proposing that something is done here. Your question then goes on to how do we get this done with the ANC? As I mentioned earlier, I've written to both the President and the Minister of Finance. I think it's worth pointing out here that the Minister of Finance is not responsible for the situation we find ourselves in. It's a global shock, so we'll have to find a collaborative way to get this done. But at the same time, it's worth pointing out that we can't look at these pots of money as holy cows that can't be slaughtered. We need to find a solution. The DA is putting good faith solutions on the table, and we will look to work collaboratively with our largest partner in the GNU, and of course other partners too, on how to get this done. But we simply can't wash our hands of this problem and say good luck to South Africans, they're on their own on this one. And so this is a call to action from the ANC, especially from the Minister and the President of the country to try and find a solution. The third question is on the relief to farmers. Just going to say again that the measure of relief that we're proposing here, 50% reduction in the general fuel levy and the road accident fund levy, and I'll touch on how the RAF will be funded in a moment, it is a pretty radical measure. It's a sizable quantum of money. 2 months of this would have been the equivalent of 0.5% VAT increase for a year. So we're trying to give the maximum amount of relief we're able to give at the moment. That still, of course, does not relieve the problems with fertilizers and the like that you've now mentioned. But it's a darn good start, I would say, to try and help. Now, onto your question of the RAF, we're not proposing defunding the RAF with this mechanism, where the money would have been collected at the pump and it would have gone to the National Revenue Fund to be further dispersed onto the likes of the RAF. The National Revenue Fund will now receive money from a different source of funding, the 4 sources that I've mentioned to you, led by the Compensation Fund. And the RAF will still be funded the quantum that it would have collected from the pump, but it's not collecting it from South Africans. It's collecting it from these other sources. That doesn't solve any of the contingent liabilities and the massive fiscal risk that the RAF presents to us. But we're not also trying to, in this measure, defund the RAF today. We're trying to put money back in the pockets of South Africans. I hope I've answered some of the questions there. If I've missed something, please do call it to my attention.
Yeah. All right, colleagues, there is no other question online. Are there 2 more questions? Okay, sure. Let me just say quickly just on farmers, in addition to what Mark has spoken to that we are trying to do to make sure that there's cushioning on the overall cost of fuel altogether, you would know that the Minister of Agriculture has been given a mandate by the Democratic Alliance in line with our manifesto to ensure that there is always support for farmers across board, from small scale to big scale farmers, and his department is rolling this out altogether. With vaccinations, we're also rolling them out to make sure that each and every farmer that is affected is able to enjoy the protection and support of the state. So that is also inclusive of the overall plan of making sure that we've safeguarded the agricultural sector and we also tighten protection for our economy altogether. I'll take 2 more questions and then I just want to check, are there any others? Because after this I'll close. I haven't received anything online. All right, those will be the last 2 and then we'll wrap up. I'll start with you.
Hi, and thank you. My name is Katrina. I'm from News 24. I have 2 questions. The first one is just an indication of time. You said you have engaged the minister. When do you expect a decision to be made on whether or not this proposal will be welcomed with open arms? The second one is regarding fuel supply, which I'm hoping you might be able to answer. There have been some reports that South Africa has been engaging Nigeria, specifically the Dangote refinery, for a 12-month deal. And online, it's not quite clear whether that is the South African government engaging Dangote or a private business. I'm wondering if the DA is aware of such negotiations and if you can comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Katrina. Lindsay?
Thank you. I think I'm partly covered by her first question. Just in terms of time frame, Mark, is this something, this proposal, that you think can be worked out during this budget cycle? I mean, that's still in process, and obviously things can still be amended and changed, as we learned last year. So is it your intention to try to table this proposal as part of amendments, perhaps, to the budget? Thank you.
Mark, I'll give you the first question from Katrina and the second one from Lindsay, and then James Lorimer, you can come in on the second one from Katrina.
So the short answer to the question of what's the time frame here is as soon as possible, but I'm not trying to be evasive there. It's my estimation, and I understand the pressure this puts everybody under, but it's my estimation that a fuel price shock on the 1st of April that then gets reduced shortly after that is still a shock, and it will have a pronounced effect on our economy. So I would like to see all teams, all hands on deck to try and get this done as soon as possible. Now, I'm not on the executive side, so that's easier for somebody sitting on the parliamentary benches to advise, but the execution of that will be over to the minister. But the resources, if we can agree on where the funding should come from, the short-term resources are there to try and give a reduction to this fuel price increase. And so without trying to evade your question, if we can avoid this before the full shock goes live, that would be an excellent outcome. Lindsay, your second question was also related to the time frame, but it's got to do with the budget. So just to be clear, we're not amending the fiscal framework that was passed yesterday in the House. The sources of revenue would have been, as we said earlier, at the pump from the average South African, and we're now finding a different source of money to substitute that revenue. Now, it might be the case that on the final rates bill, there might be some technical changes to facilitate what we've proposed today. That's not immediately clear that even that would be needed, but we're not tinkering with the fiscal framework. We're not tinkering with appropriations or DORA. And if technically there's a rates bill changed, then that will, it's usually within the purview of the minister to change levies by regulation, but not tax. And the courts have been quite firm on this too. So this is within the power of the minister to adjust. What we'll of course have to do for the fiscal framework to work is to make sure that the sources of funding are lined up and are executed well on, and we stand ready to help with this, to advise, to provide input, and to be open-minded about how we make that happen. The main thing here is to make sure that the fuel levy increase, that there's a 50% reduction in both those fuel levies to provide immediate relief to South Africans. We are not being flippant about how we fund that. We understand the cost. At the same time, we've come up with good faith, reasonable proposals. It shouldn't alter the process we're busy with. And it bears saying here that the DA remains committed to making sure that this budget cycle works well. At the same time, we can't be agnostic to global shocks affecting our economy, and that's why we're trying to intervene now. I hope I've answered that question.
Please take James. James, please take your seat.
Yep. I wish I could tell you more about the fuel supply issue. We're going on what Minister Mantashe has told us. I would suggest that you listen to what he says in Minister's questions this afternoon. The very first question is an ANC sweetheart question. In other words, they've asked him something on this subject, which clearly means that he's got something to say. Now, if he repeats what he told us in committee yesterday, he said that our prospects for the future are good. He said there's a lot of people who are offering us cargoes of fuel. He even went so far as to say that our fuel supplies from the Gulf are not interdicted because we're not an ally of the United States and Israel. Quite how those would come out, I don't know. Perhaps he can tell you more about that. But nevertheless, he's made this assurance, and I'm sure he'll be held accountable for it. It does look like, according to what he said, that we have no supply problems for at least the next 5 weeks. Thereafter, we'll see. I did ask him, incidentally, to give regular updates after that, and he did undertake to do that, although we don't know how regular those will be. But yeah, watch this space in Parliament. Oh, sorry, on Dangote. Yes, everybody's talking about us going to them as an alternative supply. To my understanding, they have about 160,000 barrels a day of uncommitted supply, which I'm sure we're making a bid for.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Now, colleagues, that wraps up our session. A 50% reduction on fuel levies and RAF is a reduction on the cost of fuel for South Africans. It gives relief to business, to ordinary South Africans, to also put relief on the cost of living that South Africans are battling with every day. I want to reiterate that it would have been irresponsible of us as a party in government in the GNU to not have a solution on something that affects South Africans so dire. And so that is why we took it upon ourselves to today to table these solutions here. And that is why we're engaging our GNU partners and are making sure that we put on every fight to ensure that the interests of South Africans are put forward, that they're protected and are advanced at all costs. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the media here today. Thank you to every South African tuning in. And we will, in future, also still have more to announce on other issues that affect South Africans, because that is who we are. We dala what we must for you. Thank you.
Today we are talking everything DA Federal Congress.
Yep.
When we speak about Federal Congress, like, what is it?
Every 3 years, we elect new leadership as a party, and it's an important opportunity for us as a party to set our vision for the upcoming election, which will be the local government election in 2026, and for us to debate and consider some pretty serious matters.
The decisions made at this Federal Congress are vitally important, but also the leadership that is elected has a huge task on their hands heading up to the local government elections.
Every single thing that we do within the Congress will be live. The whole entire South Africa can actually tune in and watch us take our decisions. And everybody gets to see who is elected as the DA leader. The DA podcast. The DA podcast.
Thanks for watching. Join the mission to rescue South Africa. Like and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell. Join the DA, because the DA gets things done.